March is my favorite month, not only because it's my birthday month, but also because it's Women's History Month, which is a great month to study the women of the Bible. I did this study last year and I studied 10 different women, and it was one of the most incredible studies I've done. Through these stories, I was able to see how God was working and changing and using different women and kind of how I could apply that to my life. Welcome back to my channel, Webs of Faith Elevate. My name is Abby and I'm so excited to go on this study with you. Before I jump into the 8 different women that I've chosen to study this year, I wanted to do a quick recap of all the women I studied last year. I studied 10 different women of Eve, Miriam, Sarah, Hagar, Deborah, Abigail, Ruth, Esther, Elizabeth, and Mary. These videos are still up on my TikTok and you can go scroll back and find them. It's going to be back in March of 2023, which is a little bit of scrolling, but I do have them labeled. So I have my notes from last year, so I'm going to just quickly go through. So Eve, we can find her in Genesis, and she's the mother of all living things. However, she was deceived and she was always thirsty for more, but she still was an amazing, incredible woman, and God chose her to start motherhood and to be the first woman. Miriam was the second woman I chose, who is Moses' sister. And she was a prophetess, which is so incredible to hear that a woman had such power. However, she did suffer with jealousy and gossiping a little bit. Sarah, if we go back to Genesis, was Abraham's wife, and that was the story that I resonate with just because I struggle with infertility. She was a godly woman, however, she was very doubtful. But in the end, God did bless her with a child. Hagar was Sarah's slave, and when Sarah was doubting God, she had Abraham sleep with Hagar and therefore became pregnant with a child, and that made Sarah jealous, and so she was cast away. But she didn't lose her faith. Hagar kept her faith, and God found her and God saw her. Deborah is one that we see in Judges. She became a judge and she became a prophet on her own merit. So it wasn't about who she married or what she did. It was all on her own prophets. Judges were people who would carry the Israelites out of whatever situation they were in. Next up, I chose to study Abigail because she has my name, but she was married to a really bad man through no fault of her own because she couldn't choose who she married, but God still saw that. She was a very strong character and a very obedient character and a very loyal character, and God used her in great ways. Ruth was another very loyal character in the Bible. She was very loyal to her mother-in-law, so she was a widow, and it would have been easier for her to just go back to her family, but she stayed with her widowed mother-in-law, and she worked through all of the things that come with being two widowed women, ended up marrying Boaz, and became the great-grandmother of King David. Esther has her own book in the Bible, and I think it's an amazing book of the Bible. Esther was an orphan who was kind of a minority, but through her beauty and her obedience and everything else that God had blessed her with, she ended up saving nations. In the New Testament, Elizabeth and Mary were the last two that I chose to study. Elizabeth was barren, but also blameless. She was an example of a woman who was a super godly woman, yet he still chose to make her wait for a child. But then she had John the Baptist, which is pretty impressive. Mary was a poor, unwed, young person who God chose to have favor upon and make her the mother of Jesus. Through all of these different stories, we can see that God used them all in different ways, and it didn't matter if they were blameless, if they were perfect, if they questioned God, if they had issues. He used them, and he was able to overcome anything that was a barrier in their way. If you made it this far, let me know. So last year I had to do them in parts because that's how TikTok made me do it. If you liked the parts, let me know, and I will do that again this year. Otherwise, I'm just going to do longer videos.